curious chimps.
You know, this kind of segues because I've been wanting to ask you. We're kind of running out of time. We may have like 5 minutes left or something. But I'm just curious because we've pretty much extracted like a lot of your like the facets of you, Carlos. But like the one thing we haven't talked about is the traditions themselves and like shamanism itself. Because this seems kind of, even for someone like me who's looked into it a little bit, this seems a little like ambiguous or vague. Because maybe it's just kind of words that we throw out in an umbrella fashion. I'd love to get more granular on that because obviously it's all going to bleed back into what we're talking about. I don't know if I'm opening up a real can of worms here or not.
I love that you were like, I think we've got 5 minutes left. How about you tell me about the last 50,000 year development of these traditions?
Maybe I can squeeze you a little and just say like,
I'll
what
try.
is shamanism and how is it? Yeah, we'll get you back on.
We'll
man.
have to do a part two.
We'll do a part two.
Yeah, I would love to be back on and try to focus on that.
Yeah.
It's understandable with what we've all gone through. And I love talking to you guys. I actually like, you guys are doing wonders for me in my own like organization of my ideas and things like that.
Thank you.
And hopefully I'm doing something
Likewise,
similar for you.
100%.
True.
So even the word tradition to me is, I'm not a huge fan. I kind of feel like it's inaccurate. It's the term that is most used. So obviously I use it because people will probably know what I'm talking about, but I don't like it because it implies that things are done the way that they used to be done. And that's not true. I've worked with the same family of curanderos for 11 years, and they don't do it the same that they did 10 years ago. And that's just 10 years. If you went back 100 years to that same indigenous community, they were doing it totally different than they are now. And if you went back 500 years, they were doing it totally different than they were 100 years ago. I will say that the rate of change has accelerated now, and that's just a phenomenon of change. You know, acceleration of change has happened as a part of what our lives have been. Like, you know, there was some new technology coming out every 20 years or something, then 10, then 5, then 1. It seems like there's a new technology every 6 months now. Yeah. It'll probably get to the point where it's like every other day or something. You know, change is definitely happening faster, but that's including tradition as well. And so to me, science is a better word to describe, because it really is an investigation. It's just that the investigation into better understanding our own identity, and in particular, like how to stay healthy, includes what could be called alternate dimensions of reality. And our classic science tends to stay in its lane of perceptive ability limitations. In that sense, I mean, like, we rely on what we can see, hear, taste, touch, smell, all that to determine what is real. But even within science, we have branches of science that go outside of that. You know, we know about X-rays, we know about gamma rays, we even know about ultraviolet and infrared. Like, that's part of terminology that we know, even though it refers to something that we can't perceive, at least not directly. We have to have some technological intervention that allows us to. What I would refer to as the science of plant medicine still stays in the lane of what is possible with our perceptive ability, except that they use substances enhanced by a system of methods, rituals, that expand the perceptive ability. So it expands your awareness to include infrared, for example, and ultraviolet, but yet without technological intervention, simply through technological ingestion, maybe, because you're taking substances that amplify your perception. And so to me, that tradition, it has been this constantly developing system to enhance how we can utilize amplified states of awareness. And that is why the ceremony became a part of the tradition, was because people probably quickly realized that if they just took this substance and walked around and interacted with people during the day, it actually probably confused them. It didn't allow them to enhance that ability and gain the most from it. So I'm sure along the way they were like, hey, let's do this at night, first of all, because at night our senses are already enhanced. You know, when you're in a dark room, your pupils naturally get larger as a desire to take in more light. And you also in quiet become more sensitive to sound. And you know, sensory deprivation is something that we're all familiar with. The reason why you go into sensory deprivation tanks is because it has a natural physiological response of amplifying our ability to perceive. And so this is kind of like ceremony is like, hey, let's do this sensory deprivation thing. And then elements began to build upon that. They began to interact with the spirits of their ancestors, spirits of plants, spirits of animals, spirits of the natural world that exist in a state that is invisible to us normally or inaudible to us normally. But now we're visible and audible. And through those interactions, these spirits started to say, hey, I've got some ideas for you. And thus these traditions started to develop based on the insights and communication with beings, conscious beings of elements of nature. And I mean, I can't imagine anything more fascinating than that, to be honest. I mean, how incredibly fascinating can you get?
Yeah.
And if you have taken ayahuasca, chances are you had something similar happen, you know, where there was this point where you felt this communication, possibly incredibly direct communication with a being that normally would be inaccessible or invisible or, you know, just out of the realm of your reality. And that's what our ancestors were doing forever. And that's how they were able to tap into those insights.